Today is Tuesday, January 6, 2026, and here is the news that you can use. This briefing is built for CIOs, CSOs, CTOs, and public sector and enterprise tech leaders who need decisions, not noise. Microsoft is making an autonomy bet inside Fabric, and Amazon Web Services is putting agentic AI into an enablement pipeline with near-term dates. FedRAMP is also tightening how security communications and assessment boundaries are handled, which changes operational workflows in the next few weeks. We'll close with a NIST checklist deadline and a GAO finding that reinforces why modernization has to include controls, not just new features. First up, Microsoft says it's acquiring Osmos, and it's positioning the deal as a way to accelerate autonomous data engineering in Microsoft Fabric. The signal is that agentic automation is moving from experiments into default platform workflows for how pipelines get built, maintained, and optimized. That can reduce backlog and improve time to insight, but it can also make it harder to explain what changed, when it changed, and why a dataset moved the way it did. Your move is to define guardrails before autonomy becomes normal, including required lineage, change approvals for production pipelines, and audit-grade logging. If Fabric is in your roadmap, assume these capabilities will influence the platform's default operating model over the next year. In related news, Amazon Web Services is turning agentic AI into an enablement funnel with explicit deadlines. AWS highlighted a 6-week cohort on agentic AI on AWS starting February 20, 2026, and it promoted the global 10,000 AIdeas competition with an initial submission deadline of January 21, 2026. Vendor-led cohorts and competitions often become the reference patterns your teams copy, so the architecture choices and safety defaults in those examples matter. The practical next step is to standardize your agent governance now, including what tools agents can call, what data they can touch, and how actions are logged and reviewed. If you want the business value, you also need a clean kill switch, so you can stop an agent flow without taking down the whole service. Now to federal operations, FedRAMP is moving from this is the process to enforcement for the FedRAMP security inbox requirement. FedRAMP states it will begin enforcement after January 5, 2026, starting with an emergency test, and it also outlines escalating corrective actions beginning March 1st, May 1st, and July 1st, 2026. This matters because security communications failures are often what turns a manageable incident into a public failure, especially when the wrong team gets the message too late. If you're a cloud service provider, treat this like an on-call readiness drill with ownership, monitoring, and a documented escalation path that actually gets exercised. If you're an agency buyer, ask for proof of that readiness, not just a statement that the mailbox exists. Staying with FedRAMP, there's a boundary-related change coming fast that can reshape how assessments are scoped for some providers. FedRAMP's minimum assessment scope enters optional wide release beginning January 12, 2026, and the guidance states providers may adopt it in place of the traditional FedRAMP boundary after that date. The fine print is important because transitioning requires the significant change request process, and it must be assessed by a FedRAMP-recognized assessor. For product and GRC teams, this is a planning move, not a shortcut, and it can change evidence expectations and timelines. If you think you'll benefit, map the boundary story now, align it with your system architecture, and coordinate early with your 3PAO and sponsoring agency. Turning to end-user AI operations, OpenAI has a change that can surprise Mac users if you don't communicate it clearly. In ChatGPT release notes, OpenAI says the voice experience in the ChatGPT macOS app is retiring effective January 15, 2026. OpenAI also states that voice continues to be available on chatgpt.com, iOS, Android, and the Windows app, which means users won't lose voice entirely, but their desktop habit might break overnight. If your organization has approved workflows that rely on voice for accessibility, executive briefings, or rapid note capture, publish a quick internal guidance note now. This is also a good reminder that endpoint behavior differs across platforms, so your policy should specify supported endpoints, not just ChatGPT. Next, there's an engineering deadline that can become a production incident if it slips, because OpenAI's API deprecations page lists a hard removal date for the real-time API beta. OpenAI states the real-time API beta will be deprecated and removed from the API on February 27, 2026, and it directs developers to migrate to the generally available real-time API interface. If you have voice agents, interactive assistants, kiosks, or low-latency experiences built on the beta interface, treat this as a calendar risk with an owner and a migration plan. The best operational pattern is an inventory first, then a staged rollout with parallel runs, and a rollback option that's tested before you need it. If you do nothing, you'll learn about this deadline in production, and that's the most expensive way to learn. Now to NIST, and a governance item that sounds quiet but has real operational consequences for secure configuration at scale. NIST's CSRC notice for the draft update to SP 870, Revision 5 says the comment period is open through January 16, 2026 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. This guidance sits behind how many organizations build, publish, and reuse security configuration checklists, which can drive automation in CI/CD pipelines and continuous compliance tooling. If you're trying to standardize hardening across cloud environments, checklist clarity and machine consumable formats are a force multiplier. If the draft doesn't reflect the reality of modern stacks, this is your window to submit feedback while it can still shape the final guidance. Finally, a risk and oversight signal from GAO that should matter to anyone funding, awarding, or administering large initiatives. In GAO 26-107-444, GAO reports that selected federal award programs did not fully include identified requirements and leading practices to oversee and prevent fraud, waste, and abuse in federal awards. The strategic takeaway is that program integrity is increasingly a systems problem, where identity, workflow controls, monitoring, and auditability determine whether dollars move safely. For CIOs and program leaders, modernization should include controls that are measurable and automatable, not just new portals and dashboards. If you're modernizing grants or award workflows, treat fraud prevention requirements as architecture inputs, not a compliance appendix. That's the exchange for today. If you're getting value from this briefing, share it with someone who owns the risk or the budget. The Exchange Daily is free, and it's built to give you fast, executive-grade insight in a few minutes. All original content, formatting, and presentation are copyright 2026 Matora Solutions LLC, a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, all rights reserved. For more information about our work and other projects, drop us a note at info@matorasolutions.com.